Hi, this is Matt with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and this is Monday, August the 6th. This will be our chart lesson for today, and it's going to be a pretty quick chart lesson today, folks. There just was nothing happening today. We spent really the majority of the day in a three-point trading range, and there were a couple of setups, but even those setups were not ideal, really. I'll show you what I saw for the day, and there just wasn't much option. There wasn't much volume. There weren't many bars. If you didn't catch this move early on, right after the open, there was a long right here off the trend line, and hopefully you probably had this trend line drawn up through here off these first couple of swings. This one actually was from the previous day's trading, but that's okay. Sometimes you'll get it like that, and if you drew that up through there, you should have had something like that right there. I actually drew mine through the close and right through there, and that turned out to be a little more accurate because it looks like we did bounce off the trend line again right there. But let me just go over the trades real quick. It's not going to take long. There were only a handful today. And then I'll show you a couple other things, and we'll probably call it a day because there just wasn't much to talk about today. But the trend was up at the open. I would say we were pretty much in this trading range right here, but we had these two swings, and we had this little two-legged pullback that tested this breakout area, but more than anything, it tested this trend line, this possible trend line coming off these two swings, and it bounced instantly with a very bullish bar. And it's funny it worked out this way because I just happened to post a article at the website today that talks about the opening moves, and how generally the first move is kind of a fake out or a trap, and that's what this was. There was a move down that faked all the weak players to the short side, and then it reversed, and look how strongly it reversed. And so go read that article if you get time, because I think it plays in perfect to today, and I didn't really plan it that way. It just turned out that way. So go take a look at that. But this is actually a two-legged pullback to the EMA and the trend line, and there was actually a second entry that triggered right here, but it really wasn't a very good setup. Coming off of the EMA, you need a better setup than that right there. You need a bullish bar in your direction, and we didn't get that to here, at least not on my chart. So hopefully you didn't get trapped to the long side right there and then exit only to watch it take off again. And that's very possible because that's what they try to do to traders at the open. They try to fool them. And then prices, the price action is generally right, and the trends were up, the swings were going up, and there's always a possibility that we end up in a trading range and prices come back down. But generally that first move is going to be somewhat of a fake out, and that's what this was. So maybe you saw that, maybe you didn't. But anyway, there was a long right here. There was actually a long right here, but I think it was really risky at this point to go long right there. And it would have worked. We went a little bit higher, and then we just went into this trading range and spent the whole day there for the most part until late this evening. We had to sell off, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But there was another entry right here. You could have entered here or here, and this didn't quite touch the trend line based on the way I drew it, but it's really close enough that it made it okay to take this trade. As you see, it didn't go very far before it pulled back again, so it was really better to wait on a second entry, and that one got a touch off the trend line and then had a nice little burst up. But if you took either one of those, they weren't necessarily bad trades because this is a nice measured move, and if you measure this leg right here, you'll see that it's a nice measured move off this leg, and so that gave it a little more credence too. And if you go back to this other trade and you measure that leg, let's just see how close those were. There's leg one, and then there's leg two, and they're pretty close. If you use the closes, you see they're perfect there, and that's what you'll see a lot of times. But if you used it off this, you see that wasn't quite enough there, and so you should have been looking for this to go a little bit lower here. But this was a nice measured move right here, so it was okay to go long right here. And we did have a trap on this one too, because this one broke lower than this one. And you look over here, this little doji here did not break below this one. It was down here before it broke below, and that created the trap. And that's generally what gives you the momentum to propel you higher. But if you missed it here, you definitely should have gone long here, because this was a second entry off the low side. You had your first entry right here. You had your new high, so your count's over. This was the first one that broke higher. And so that's your first entry. Then we pulled back with a second leg, and then that was your second entry long. But because you got a new low here, you've also got first entry and then second entry, and that's probably going to confuse a lot of people. I probably shouldn't even mention it, but you got to learn to watch for it. So that was a second entry long right there coming off the low side. And it propelled up to a new high, and it was good for an easy, either one of these was good for an easy scalp. But then we went into this trading range, and nothing much happened the rest of the day. And there was a possibility of a couple of shorts up here, but they were just really, really risky, because we still had the trend was up. There was no break of the trend line until we really got out into here. And by that time, there were just so many overlapping bars, and there's just really not a good short anywhere in here. There's not a good long anywhere in here. This was the closest thing, and this might have even worked. I didn't like it, didn't take it, so I didn't mark it. But 25 now, so you would have got trapped right there. So that was not a, that's just not a good long. There's just too many overlapping bars, and there's no real sense of urgency to come out of that one. Even once we went lower twice, there was still no sense of urgency to climb out of that. And you got to figure they're trying to bring it down here and test this low, and then you get that right here, and you see that little break lower, it traps everybody, and then it reverses. And even this one was suspect, but that was such a nice reversal bar. If you went long right there, the only thing is you have to keep your stop below that signal bar, and if you did, it worked out, and prices went higher. But if you missed it, there was another chance to get long here and another one to get long here. This one was suspect because by this time we had 6 overlapping bars. So I don't like that one. I didn't take it. I just watched it go by, and I'm glad I did, because we came on down here and I got a better entry right down here off this double bottom that created a broader double bottom. And you can see we kind of took off from there and then tested this high. So there was a short off the high up here. All it was good for was a scalp. Any runners would have stopped out. And then by this time, there was actually a nice short right here, but look what time it is. It's well after 2:30. Well, I won't say it's well, but it's at 2:37, so it's really risky entering there, but it's a really good setup, because you figure we're coming to at least here, and I was looking for us to come down here and test this all day. That's what I was looking for. And I thought we were going to come down here, but we didn't do it. But we finally got here, and it took the very end of the day to do it. But let me show you this. And if you measure this first little range right here, you see there, that's basically the low of the range, and that's basically the high. And you drag that down there, and what do you know? This range down here is exactly the same size. That's where we bounce. And that's, that's another way to measure, to get a measured move on a range. Measure the width of the range, and if we do break out, you can look for it possibly to go the same distance as the previous range, and that's exactly. But also notice this low right here. So this would have been a good place to buy blindly if it was early, or to look for an entry. We didn't really get a good setup, but it was so close to the close. Different things happened there, but one thing that happens at the close, at the open, you have a lot more inexperienced traders. All the weekends and so forth are trading at the close, at the open. But by the time the close gets here, you're looking late in the afternoon. You're looking at mostly professional traders that are trading, and the volume usually drops off. And that's true of most all markets, but especially the indexes. And that's why I think it gets a little bit more difficult to trade in the afternoon. If you get it right, you generally get some great moves, but it just tends to get harder in the afternoon. And I believe that's why, because I believe there's more professional traders trading, and a lot fewer of these the guys you catch off guard at the open every morning to get whipsawed. And so keep that in mind. So that's really all there were. There were really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decent trades today, and that was it. Maybe 6 if you count this as 2. And there just wasn't much going on. It just was a day that you say, hey, by the time we got into here at lunchtime and we're still in this little old tight 3-point range, I'm thinking to myself, hey, I'd be better off on the golf course today. And I almost left and went to the golf course. But hung around here at the office and took care of some other things. And but anyway, that's it for today. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit more about second entries. We're about 11 minutes, and but I always get so many questions about second entries. But let me just get all this stuff off the chart and make it a little easier to see. And the thing about second entries is people think they're this real difficult, mystical entry, and all a second entry is, what we're doing is the market moves in twos, and so we're looking for double legs. And basically, if you go just by the rules, you got a new high right here because it's higher than this high, right? So the count is 0. So we pull back. Well, there's the first bar to tick higher, so that's the entry 1. And then we pull back again, and then there's the second bar that ticks higher. So technically, that's a second entry. But that's not a good trade entry. And what it turned out was there were 2 legs in that leg, and then you got another leg here, and it's got 2 legs in it too. And if you measure it, you see that. So what we're looking for is we're looking for a good 2-legged correction. And you can see there's leg 1 and there's leg 2, and you got this little correction in the middle. But technically, there's 2 legs down to this low, and then a correction, and then 2 more legs down to there, because now you got a new high, because that broke higher than that. And so you're coming down. There's your first entry, and so there's your second entry. And hopefully you can see that, and that makes sense. So you're not just always wanting to just count the breaks above, even though that's technically how you do it. You got to see some, when you make this new high and you make that first leg up, you want to see some form of bullishness. Now here's a much better second entry. Now look at this one. You got a clear leg down, and you got a fairly bullish move up right here. And then you got a clear second move down, so that's a better second entry. Even though that's a second entry right there, it's horrible because, first of all, you had no real move here higher. All that is a trap to the downside. And then you got all these overlapping bars and all these dojis. So there's been no display of bullishness yet. You want to see some kind of proof that the market's going higher. And finally you come down here and you make this bigger 2-legged move, and then you got this big bullish bar. Well, now you got a little bit of show of bullishness, and you've had you had 1, 2, you've had 3 tries to go higher that all failed. And this is the first one that had any real semblance of closing on a high, coming off a low and closing on a high. But you also had a trap here, so that makes this even more valuable. You had a trend line here. You had a breakout area here. So this was a lot better setup than trying to go long up here on this second entry. Now, like I said, this is a much better second entry long right here. And you see even it stalled just a little bit and tried to trap people and then turned back up. But what it is the trend was just kind of running out of momentum there. But and this right here, this is here's your new high. You pull back. There's your first entry long. And then you pull back again, and then there's another second entry long. But again, it's not a very good one because this is a doji, this is somewhat of a doji, that's a doji. Look how nothing's closing up there. There's no show of real bullishness up here. So all that was a trap, and look how it went lower. And then finally you get a lot of matching bars down here. You kind of got this low across here, and you broke 1 tick lower and reversed and kind of closed higher. Now that's a show of bullishness at a low area, and that's kind of what it looks like. You're looking to buy low. You're not looking to buy. Now, if the trend is really, really strong, this might be a good setup right here. But this is definitely not a strong trend because you just barely broke higher there. You broke higher there, and it went nowhere. It just trapped you and closed on its very low. So you shouldn't be thinking long there. This is congestion, so you need a trap or a breakout or something, and you didn't get that to here. If you notice, this line would have been drawn right across there, and probably even right there, because now you got more touches across there. And there's your first break lower that trapped somebody, and you would have had your highs up along here. Probably get more touches right there, and you see all that is a failed breakout, and then they came back up and tested it, and it held again. So then you got to be thinking we're going lower, and that's what happened. We're going to come back down here and test this side. So hopefully that makes sense. Really, again, I'm going to say this one more time, then I'm going to close for the day. A second entry long, what you're doing is you're simply looking for 2 legs in one. If the trend is up, then you're looking for a correction of 2 legs to the downside that will lead into a reversal of the trend, and that reversal is going to generally happen at the EMA or at the trend line. But you still need a good, unless the trend is really strong, you still need a good setup. And and if you know the rules, you know that entering out of this right here to the long side is probably going to fail, because what happens when you break out of a trading range? And that's all that is a tiny trading range. And if you break out of a trading range, usually it's going to fail. And look what happened. It ticked out 1 tick and failed and went lower. And that was just the start of the second leg down, because here's your first leg right here, and then 2 legs up, and then 2 legs back down on the bigger second leg. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Remember that you're looking for 2 legs, and generally you need to see a little bit of show of bullishness if the trend is up, or a little bit of show of bearishness if the trend is down, before you start looking to. So in other words, we broke higher here. There's no sign of bullishness there. There wasn't any here either. So there's no reason to be thinking long yet. You need a better setup on that unless there's a really strong trend. But now we came back here and we had a little bit of, there's a nice move up, almost really brought back to the high again. And then it pulled back, and then it created the trap. We ticked lower than that right here, made this little inside bar. And in this case, it's a little bitty inside bar that allows you to get long way down here at the lows, because the lows are coming right across there like so. So you're able to get long at the lows, and it worked higher. And if you kept your stop below this bar or that bar, you were okay. But this is the one I would have been looking at, because that's the low of the swing. And if you entered on this one, then you'd probably be thinking, keep my stop below that one, but maybe even below that one. But you got to stay within your 2-point means as well. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.